The latest signals emerging from multiple federal courtrooms suggest that a decisive shift may now be underway in one of the most closely watched legal battles in modern American political history. Reports indicate that federal judges overseeing several key proceedings involving former President Donald Trump are moving with increasing coordination and urgency, tightening procedural control and limiting the flexibility that has defined Trump's legal strategy for years. According to public information and court scheduling developments, these judicial moves are not isolated. Analysts indicate they represent a broader effort by the federal judiciary to assert firm control over timelines, filings, and the pace of litigation as the United States approaches another high-stakes election cycle. What is unfolding is not merely a sequence of court dates and motions. It is a structural shift in how these cases are being managed, and the consequences could reshape the political and legal landscape simultaneously. If you value clear, fact-based political analysis without media noise, consider subscribing and stay with me as we break this down step by step. What we know so far is grounded in a pattern that has become increasingly visible across multiple proceedings. Public filings show federal judges emphasizing strict adherence to procedural deadlines, narrowing the scope of permissible delays, and signaling a reluctance to allow extended litigation tactics that have historically slowed complex political cases. Official statements confirm that courts are focusing on maintaining orderly progression toward trial or resolution, with particular attention to preventing indefinite postponements. Reports suggest that this coordinated firmness is partly driven by the proximity of the 2026 political calendar and the institutional interest in ensuring that major federal cases are resolved through standard judicial processes rather than prolonged procedural maneuvering. To understand the significance of this moment, it is necessary to rewind the timeline. Over the past several years, Trump's legal approach has relied heavily on appeals, jurisdictional challenges, and strategic delay mechanisms that are widely available within the U.S. legal system. Analysts indicate that this strategy has often been effective in slowing proceedings, buying time, and shifting legal battles into new procedural arenas. According to public information, the legal team has consistently pursued expansive interpretations of executive immunity, constitutional protections, and venue disputes in an effort to reshape the battlefield before any final judgments could be reached. However, the current phase appears different. Federal judges are now signaling through scheduling orders and courtroom management decisions that extended delay tactics may face stricter scrutiny. Public filings show that requests for additional time, expanded discovery, or procedural reconsideration are being evaluated within narrower boundaries than before. This does not eliminate Trump's legal options, but it does alter the strategic environment in which those options must operate. Analysts suggest that when judges impose tighter case management structures, the room for maneuvering shrinks, and legal teams must pivot toward more direct engagement with the substantive arguments of each case. The situation set up reflects a convergence of legal and political timelines. According to widely reported developments, multiple federal proceedings involving Trump are moving through critical pretrial phases simultaneously. Reports indicate that judges are increasingly aware of the national implications of prolonged uncertainty surrounding these cases. While courts maintain formal independence from political considerations, analysts note that judicial institutions also recognize the importance of maintaining public confidence in the orderly administration of justice. When high-profile cases extend indefinitely without resolution, that confidence can erode. As a result, the current tightening of procedural control appears designed to maintain momentum and clarity. Tension begins to build when these legal dynamics intersect with internal political calculations. According to public information, Trump remains a central figure within Republican Party strategy and national political discourse. Any acceleration or consolidation of legal proceedings therefore carries immediate political consequences. Reports suggest that GOP leadership is closely monitoring courtroom developments, aware that stricter judicial management could compress the timeline in which legal uncertainties play out. Analysts indicate that when courts signal a determination to keep cases moving, political operatives must adjust messaging, fundraising strategies, and campaign planning accordingly. At the same time, Trump's legal team faces a complex balancing act. Public filings show continued efforts to assert constitutional defenses and challenge procedural decisions. But analysts indicate that the effectiveness of these efforts may diminish if courts maintain unified discipline over scheduling and case structure. According to public information, federal judges possess broad authority to manage their dockets, and once a firm timeline is established, altering that timeline becomes increasingly difficult. This reality places additional pressure on legal strategists to adapt quickly. Another factor intensifying the tension is the perception of institutional resolve. Reports suggest that recent courtroom signals are being interpreted by legal observers as evidence that federal judges intend to prevent any perception that the judicial process can be indefinitely delayed through procedural complexity. Official statements confirm that courts remain committed to due process and fair hearings. But analysts indicate that fairness does not require unlimited postponement. Instead, it requires consistent application of rules and timelines to all parties, regardless of political prominence. As this phase unfolds, the broader narrative centers on control. Who controls the pace of the legal process? Who sets the boundaries for delay and acceleration? And how does that control influence the political environment leading into a major election cycle? According to public information and courtroom developments, the balance of control may now be shifting more decisively toward the federal judiciary. Reports suggest that judges are increasingly willing to enforce structured timelines, signaling that the era of open-ended procedural maneuvering could be narrowing. This shift does not predetermine outcomes in any specific case. Analysts consistently emphasize that legal outcomes will depend on evidence, arguments, and judicial interpretation. However, the strategic terrain is changing. When courts assert tighter management, the ability to shape the calendar becomes a central factor in the overall legal strategy. Trump's legal team must now operate within a more constrained procedural framework, and that constraint introduces new risks and uncertainties. The tension is no longer hypothetical. It is unfolding in real time through scheduling orders, courtroom directives, and judicial commentary. Reports indicate that the coming months will reveal whether this tightening of federal case control leads to accelerated hearings, consolidated proceedings, or new legal confrontations over procedural authority. What is clear is that the current moment represents a critical turning point in the intersection of law and politics. As these legal proceedings move into a more tightly controlled phase, the escalation now unfolding is not simply procedural, it is structural. Reports suggest that federal judges across multiple jurisdictions are increasingly determined to maintain disciplined timelines, narrowing the strategic space that has historically allowed complex political litigation to stretch across years. According to public information and recent courtroom developments, this tightening of judicial control is being interpreted by legal analysts as a pivotal shift in the balance of power between defense strategy and court authority. The escalation becomes clearer when examining how these cases are progressing simultaneously. Public filings show that multiple federal proceedings involving former President Donald Trump are advancing through pretrial stages at roughly the same time. Analysts indicate that this convergence creates a scenario in which delays in one case may no longer significantly affect the broader legal landscape. Instead, courts appear focused on ensuring that each proceeding moves forward independently with strict adherence to procedural schedules. Reports suggest that this approach limits the effectiveness of broader delay strategies that rely on sequential timing or overlapping appeals. Within Trump's legal team, the pressure to adapt is intensifying. According to public information, defense attorneys are continuing to file motions and challenges consistent with standard legal practice. However, analysts indicate that the environment in which those motions are being considered has changed. Federal judges now appear less inclined to grant extended pauses or indefinite reconsiderations, particularly when such requests could push proceedings beyond established judicial calendars. Official statements confirm that courts remain committed to due process, but they are also emphasizing efficiency and clarity in case management. This shift is generating a deeper power struggle that extends beyond the courtroom. Reports suggest that Republican political strategists are closely monitoring these developments, aware that accelerated legal timelines could intersect with campaign planning and messaging. According to widely reported political analysis, Trump's continued prominence within the GOP means that any major courtroom movement carries immediate strategic implications. Analysts indicate that when legal uncertainty compresses into shorter time frames, political organizations must respond with equal speed, recalibrating messaging and operational priorities. The consequences for internal party dynamics are becoming increasingly visible. According to public information, some GOP figures have expressed concern about how ongoing legal battles could influence voter perception and electoral strategy. Reports suggest that others remain firmly supportive, framing the legal challenges as politically motivated or overstated. Analysts indicate that this divergence reflects a broader tension within the party between maintaining unified support for Trump and preparing for potential legal outcomes that could reshape the political landscape. As federal courts tighten control over case progression, that tension may intensify. Beyond domestic political calculations, geopolitical implications are also emerging. According to public information and international media coverage, global observers are closely following the trajectory of these cases as a measure of institutional stability within the United States. Analysts indicate that when high-profile legal proceedings involving a former president move toward resolution under strict judicial management, international partners and adversaries alike assess the strength and independence of American institutions. Reports suggest that a clear demonstration of procedural consistency and judicial authority can reinforce perceptions of institutional resilience. At the same time, the strategic analysis within legal and political circles is becoming more complex. According to public filings and expert commentary, Trump's legal team continues to explore constitutional arguments related to executive authority and immunity. Analysts indicate that these arguments remain central to the defense strategy, but their impact may depend heavily on how quickly courts move towards substantive rulings. When timelines tighten, the window for extended appellate maneuvering narrows, and legal teams must prepare for more immediate substantive engagement with the core issues of each case. Future risks are now being evaluated with greater urgency. Reports suggest that if federal judges maintain strict procedural control, key hearings and decisions could arrive sooner than previously anticipated. According to public information, this acceleration would not necessarily determine outcomes, but it would shape the environment in which political and legal strategies unfold. Analysts indicate that compressed timelines often increase volatility, as unexpected rulings or developments can trigger rapid shifts in public perception and political positioning. Another layer of risk involves the potential for overlapping legal and political events. According to widely reported developments, the approach of major electoral milestones adds complexity to every courtroom decision. Analysts indicate that federal judges are likely aware of this context, but remain focused on maintaining judicial independence and procedural integrity. Reports suggest that the emphasis on strict case management reflects an institutional determination to ensure that legal processes proceed according to established rules rather than external pressures. Within this environment, strategic recalibration is inevitable. Trump's legal team must now operate within tighter procedural boundaries while continuing to assert robust defenses. GOP leadership must prepare for multiple legal scenarios unfolding in parallel. and federal judges appear committed to maintaining firm oversight of case progression, signaling that the era of open-ended legal timelines may be coming to a close. According to public information and expert analysis, this convergence of legal discipline and political urgency creates one of the most consequential moments in recent American legal political history. If you're still here, you already understand how significant these developments are. Stay with me as we examine what happens next and why it matters. The deeper consequences of this tightening judicial control are now moving beyond procedural adjustments and into the broader architecture of American political power. Reports suggest that as federal judges maintain firm command over scheduling and courtroom management, the legal environment surrounding former President Donald Trump is entering a phase defined less by delay and more by decisive movement. According to public information and widely reported developments, this transition has implications not only for the outcomes of individual cases, but for the balance of institutional authority across the United States. Analysts indicate that when federal courts demonstrate unified procedural discipline in high-profile cases, the message extends far beyond the immediate legal arena. It reinforces the principle that judicial timelines and courtroom authority remain independent of political cycles or individual prominence. Reports suggest that this perception is central to maintaining institutional credibility, particularly when the legal subject is a former president and active political figure. According to public filings and official court communications, judges continue to emphasize due process and fairness while simultaneously reinforcing that procedural rules apply equally to all parties. The global impact of these developments is already being assessed by foreign governments and international observers. According to public information and international policy analysis, allies and competitors alike are watching closely to see how American institutions handle cases of this magnitude. Analysts indicate that a structured, consistent judicial process can strengthen perceptions of democratic stability, demonstrating that even the most politically sensitive cases are handled through established legal frameworks rather than ad hoc political interventions. Reports suggest that this institutional consistency remains a critical component of U.S. credibility on the global stage. At the same time, future predictions within the domestic political landscape are becoming more complex. According to widely reported political analysis, the intersection of accelerated legal timelines and ongoing campaign dynamics creates a scenario filled with uncertainty. Analysts indicate that if courts continue to enforce strict procedural control, key legal milestones could emerge at moments that significantly influence political strategy. This does not imply predetermined outcomes, but it does suggest that the timing of legal decisions may carry substantial political weight. Reports suggest that both supporters and opponents of Trump are preparing for multiple possible scenarios, each with distinct strategic consequences. Within the Republican Party, the possibility of accelerated legal resolution introduces new calculations. According to public information and political reporting, party leaders must balance continued support for Trump with the need to maintain organizational flexibility. Analysts indicate that when legal proceedings move forward under tighter judicial management, the range of potential outcomes becomes more immediate and concrete. Reports suggest that this dynamic may intensify internal discussions about messaging, contingency planning, and long-term strategic direction as the political calendar advances. Power shifts are also becoming more visible within the broader institutional landscape. According to public information and expert commentary, the federal judiciary's assertion of procedural control represents a reaffirmation of judicial independence at a moment of intense national scrutiny. Analysts indicate that when courts maintain consistent timelines and resist extended procedural delays, they reinforce the principle that legal accountability operates independently of political influence. Reports suggest that this institutional posture may shape public confidence in the legal system for years to come, regardless of specific case outcomes. Another significant factor is the potential for cascading effects across related legal and political arenas. According to public filings and legal analysis, decisions made within one proceeding can influence strategy in others, particularly when timelines begin to align. Analysts indicate that tighter case management increases the likelihood that developments in one courtroom will rapidly affect planning in another. Reports suggest that this interconnected environment raises the stakes for every motion, hearing, and ruling, as each step may carry broader implications. Looking ahead, future predictions remain grounded in uncertainty but shaped by emerging patterns. According to public information and widely reported analysis, federal courts appear committed to maintaining steady progression towards substantive resolution. Analysts indicate that this commitment does not eliminate legal complexity, but it does reduce the probability of indefinite procedural extension. Reports suggest that the coming months will likely feature a series of critical hearings, rulings, and strategic adjustments as all parties respond to the evolving judicial environment. What remains clear is that the intersection of law and politics has entered a new phase. According to public information and expert assessment, the tightening of federal case control signals a determination by judicial institutions to maintain clarity, consistency, and momentum. Analysts indicate that this environment will require careful navigation by legal teams, political leaders, and institutional stakeholders alike. Reports suggest that the outcomes of these efforts will shape not only individual legal cases, but also broader perceptions of institutional strength and accountability within the United States. For clear, in-depth political analysis and global power breakdowns you won't find in mainstream coverage, subscribe to MR Alex Crown. Share your perspective in the comments. Serious analysis deserves serious discussion.